ഹലോ, ഞാൻ റിജി. റിജോസിൻ്റെ യൂട്യൂബ് ചാനലിലേക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും സ്വാഗതം. അപ്പം നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത് ദ പേഴ്സൺ സീസ് ഇറ്റ് മാനുവൽ 2025 എന്ന ഈ ബുക്കിനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള വീഡിയോസ്. നമ്മൾ ഫസ്റ്റ് തന്നെ പറയുന്നത് ഈ ബുക്കിലെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട കാര്യം സിലബസ്, അതുപോലെ തന്നെ നമ്മുടെ വീഡിയോ റിലേറ്റഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട കാര്യങ്ങളെല്ലാം ഡിസ്ക്രിപ്ഷൻ ബോക്സിൽ കൊടുക്കും. അപ്പോൾ ദയവേത് ചെക്ക് ചെയ്ത് നോക്കണം. ഈ വീഡിയോയിൽ നമ്മൾ ക്ലാസ് എടുക്കുന്നത് CSIT പേപ്പർ 1 ജനറൽ സ്റ്റഡീസിൽ ചാപ്റ്റർ 1 ജനറൽ ജോഗ്രഫിയിലെ ടോപ്പിക്സാണ് നമ്മൾ ക്ലാസ് എടുത്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ കഴിഞ്ഞ വീഡിയോയിൽ നമ്മൾ സൈക്കിൾസ്, എക്സ്ട്രീംസ് ഒക്കെയാണ് പറഞ്ഞു നിർത്തിയത് ലാസ്റ്റ്. ഈ വീഡിയോയിൽ നമ്മൾ മെഷറിംഗ് ക്ലൈമറ്റും, ഇൻട്രൊഡക്ഷൻ ടു ക്ലൈമറ്റ്, ഗ്ലോബൽ ക്ലൈമറ്റ്, പ്രിൻസിപ്പൽ ക്ലൈമറ്റ്സ് ഓഫ് ദ വേൾഡ്, അങ്ങനെ കുറേ ടോപ്പിക്സ് പറയാനുണ്ട്. ഫസ്റ്റ് നമുക്ക് ഇൻട്രൊഡക്ഷൻ ടു ക്ലൈമറ്റ് നോക്കാം. Introduction to climate. The climate of a place may be defined as a composite of the long-term prevailing weather that occurs at that location. In a sense, climate is average weather. The climate of a place may be defined as a composite of the long-term prevailing weather that occurs at that location. In a sense, climate is average weather. Climate can be measured quantitatively by calculating the long-term averages of different climate elements such as temperature and rainfall. Extremes in the weather, however, also helps us define the climate of a particular area. We can study climate on a range of geographical scales. At the smallest scale, local climates influence areas ranging from only a few miles up to tens of miles across. Examples of local climatic phenomena include sea breeze and urban heating. At larger scales, regional climates provide a picture of particular patterns of weather within individual countries or within climate zones that exist at the different latitudes on Earth. Climate zones include tropical, subtropical, desert, savanna, temperate and polar climates. Different climate zones reveal variable patterns of temperature and rainfall. At the largest scale of all, climatologists study the global climate. For example, when they are interested in how it has changed in the past and how it may change in the future. There are many influences on the climate of a particular place, the most important of which is latitude. Places near the equator receive more sunlight and are much warmer than places nearer poles. Places near the equator receive more sunlight and are much warmer than places nearer poles. This temperature differences between low and high latitudes drives the general calculation of the atmosphere, transferring heat away from the equator towards the poles. This temperature differences between low and high latitudes drives the general circulation of the atmosphere, transferring heat away from the equator towards the poles. The general circulation is split into a number of circulation cells that define separate pressure zones and belts of wind. These wind belts are sometimes called prevailing winds. However, they blow more east-west than north-south because they are deflected by the Coriolis force due to Earth rotation. The wind belts shift with the seasons and they in time shift in the climate zones. Other influences on climate includes the oceans, land, sea distribution and mountain ranges. Ocean currents have a significant effect on regional and even global climate. The Gulf Stream in the Atlantic influences the weather of northwest Europe. The periodic El Nino current in the equatorial Pacific can have drastic consequences on the weather in parts of South America and Australia. Coastal regions generally experience mild and humid, whilst the territories of large land masses have more continental climates, with warmer summers and colder winters. Mountains not only affect local climates, but also can influence regional climate as well by diverting the course of the prevailing winds. The climate of the British Isles is temperate and maritime, with a few weather extremes and a small a- annual temperature range. The British climate is influenced by the convergence of warm subtropical and cold polar air masses, which generates a zone of cyclonic low pressure and an abundance of rain-bearing depressions. The western side is generally milder in winter and receives more precipitation than the east, on account of its proximity to the Atlantic Gulf Stream and the greater presence of mountains. The British climate is influenced by the convergence of warm, subtropical and cold polar air masses, which generates a zone of cyclonic low pressure and an abundance of rain-bearing depressions. The western part is generally milder in winter and receives more precipitation than the east, on account of its proximity to the Atlantic Gulf Stream and the greater presence of mountains. നമ്മൾ ഇൻട്രൊഡക്ഷൻ ടു ക്ലൈമറ്റ് ആണ് പറഞ്ഞത്. ഇനി അടുത്തത് മെഷറിംഗ് ക്ലൈമറ്റ് ആണ് നോക്കാം. മെഷറിംഗ് ക്ലൈമറ്റ്. Climate is usually described in terms of the familiar elements of the weather, temperatures and precipitation. Rain, sleet, snow and hail are the essential indicators, but others include sunshine, wind, cloud cover, atmospheric pressure and humidity. These elements are measured systematically at a site over a period of several years, and the record of observations is used to construct an accurate summary of the climate of that location. Using a variety of statistical techniques, averages for different climate elements as well as measures of variability and the frequency of occurrence of more extreme events can be computed. Information from climate stations within a country can allow a picture of regional climate to be built up. Sometimes scientists bring together data from all over the world to study the climate of the whole earth. For example, when investigating global climate change, sometimes scientists bring together data from all over the world. Sometimes scientists bring together data from all over the world to study the climate of the whole earth. For example, when investigating global climate change. മെഷറിംഗ് ക്ലൈമറ്റ് നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞത്. ഇനി നമുക്ക് പറയാനുള്ളത് ഗ്ലോബൽ ക്ലൈമറ്റ്. The term global climate is used to refer to the general state of the world's climate. The term global climate is used to refer to the general state of the world's climate. Global climate is fundamentally influenced by the amount of energy the earth receives from the sun and also by how that energy is stored and redistributed through the world's atmosphere and oceans. The positions of the world's continents and large mountain ranges also affect global climate. Greenhouse gases in the atmosphere trap a lot of heat that would otherwise escape into space, warming the earth considerably. The general circulation of the atmosphere transports warm air from the equator, where solar heating is greatest towards the higher latitudes, keeping the hot equatorial zone cooler and the cold polar regions warmer. The simplest means of assessing the state of the global climate is to measure the global average temperature of the Earth's surface and atmosphere in contact with it. This is done by analyzing thousands of records of temperature collected from stations all over the world, both at land and at sea. Today, the global average surface temperature is about 50 degrees Celsius. This is 33 degrees Celsius warmer than the average surface temperature of the moon. It is about the same distance from the sun as the earth. The moon, of course, does not have an atmosphere and therefore no greenhouse gases to trap extra heat. During the last ice age, which ended only 14,000 years ago, global average surface temperature was 5 degrees Celsius lower than today. At that time, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere were lower, heat distribution by ocean circulation was weaker, and less energy was being received from the sun as a consequence of variations in the Earth orbit. During the last 100 years, the global average surface temperature has risen by about 0 degrees Celsius due to pollution by human beings. It is projected to rise a further 2 degrees Celsius minus 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the 21st century. During the last 100 years, the global average surface temperature has risen by about 0 degrees Celsius due to pollution by human beings. It is projected to rise a further 2 degrees Celsius minus 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the 21st century. During the last 100 years, the global average surface temperature has risen by about 0.6 degrees Celsius due to pollution by human beings. It is projected to rise a further 2 degrees Celsius minus 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the 21st century. നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞ ഗ്ലോബൽ ക്ലൈമറ്റ് ആണ് പറഞ്ഞത്. പിന്നെ വലിയ എന്താ പറയുക സ്പെല്ലിംഗ് മിസ്റ്റേക്ക് എന്ന് പറയാൻ എനിക്ക് അങ്ങനെ തോന്നുന്നില്ല. അതുകൊണ്ട് പറയാത്ത എന്തായാലും തെറ്റുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ദയവത് ക്ഷമിക്കുക എന്നും കൂടി പറയണം. കാരണം വേർഡ്സ് ഒക്കെ സിമ്പിൾ ആയിട്ടുള്ള വേർഡ്സ് ആണ്. അത് പ്രത്യേകം എടുത്ത് പറയേണ്ട കാര്യമാണ്. ഒരുപാട് കോംപ്ലിക്കേറ്റഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള വേർഡ്സ് സെൻറ്റൻസ് കുറവാണ്. എന്നാൽ ജസ്റ്റ് നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞെന്നുള്ളൂ. ഈ ഒരു ടോപ്പിക്സ് സെക്ഷൻ്റെ ഒരു പ്രത്യേകത അല്ല, നിങ്ങൾക്ക് അറിയാവുന്ന കാര്യമാണ്. അടുത്തത് പ്രിൻസിപ്പൽ ക്ലൈമറ്റ്സ് ഓഫ് ദ വേൾഡ്. Principal climates of the world, climatic divisions of the world. A natural region is a geographical unit which contains countries or parts of countries with almost uniform conditions of temperature, rainfall, and cultivated and natural vegetation. The world is divided into three main climatic zones, namely A. Hot climatic regions, B. Temperature climatic regions, and C. Cold climatic regions. അല്ല, ഹോട്ട് ക്ലൈമറ്റിക് റീജിയൻസ് ആണ് നമ്മൾ പറയുന്നത്. ഹോട്ട് ക്ലൈമറ്റിക് റീജിയൻസ് ഇക്വറ്റോറിയൽ റീജിയൻസ് ഹോട്ട് ബെൽറ്റ് ആർ regions between 0 degrees Celsius and 5 degrees Celsius north and south of the equator. This include the Amazon basin in South America, the West Indies, the Congo basin, and the Guinea coast in Africa, and parts of Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and Malaysia. As the sun's rays fall perpendicular on this region, the temperature remains high, 27 degrees Celsius throughout the year. Rainfall is also very heavy, 2000 minus 2500 mm. Evergreen dense forests, rubber trees, cocoa, groundnuts, palm trees grow here. Population is sparse, except Indonesia. One equatorial regions hot belt are regions between 0 degree and 5 degree north and south of the equator. This include the Amazon basin in South America, the West Indies, the Congo basin, and the Guinea coast in Africa, and parts of Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and Malaysia. As the sun's rays fall perpendicular on this region, the temperature remains high, 27 degrees Celsius throughout the year. Rainfall is also very heavy, 2000 minus 2500 mm. Evergreen dense forests, rubber trees, cocoa, groundnuts, palm trees grow here. Population is sparse, except Indonesia. Two summer climatic regions. Two summer climatic regions are on both sides of the equator, from about 5 degree north and 5 degree south of the equator to the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. Two summer climatic regions. Two summer climatic regions are on both sides of the equator from about 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south of the equator to the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. Venezuela and Guyana, South America, Sudan, Chad, Niger, Mali, Uganda and Kenya, Africa, South Interior Brazil, South Interior Brazil, South America, Angola, Zimbabwe, Zambia and Tanzania, Africa are the uh, typical areas. Summer climatic regions are on both sides of the equator from about 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south of the equator to the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. Venezuela and Guyana, South America, Sudan, Chad, Niger, Mali, Uganda and Kenya, Africa, South Interior, Brazil, South America, Angola, Zimbabwe, Zambia and Tanzania, Africa are the typical areas. These regions are sufficiently hot throughout the summer, followed by a long dry season. Summers are hot and moist, and winters are warm and dry. Rainfall is for a short spell during the hottest season, followed by a long dry spell. It is also called Sudan or Sa- Savannina, Savannina type or tropical grassland type. The vegetation consists of fairly dense forests with tall trees. Crops like maize, cotton, bananas, groundnut are largely grown. Coffee and sugarcane are grown in areas that receive heavy rainfall. The most common animals in this area are zebra, buffalo, antelope, giraffe, etc. Natives are mostly engaged in hunting, cattle rearing, and agriculture. Crops like maize, cotton, bananas, groundnut are largely grown. Coffee and sugarcane are grown in areas that receive heavy rainfall. The most common animals in this area are zebra, buffalo, antelope, giraffe, etc. Natives are mostly engaged in